All right.
We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome to the 80-20 Baseball Podcast, the youth baseball masterclass, baseball of all levels, where we are doing our best to master the main big needle movers, the main things that are going to make the biggest differences when it comes to player development, team culture, and what it says up on the scoreboard at the end of each game. As always, it is great to be here. We're going to have a short episode today as we get ready for the winter pitching clinic that's coming up in 2 days on Thursday, 7:30 Eastern time, 7:30 to 9. Don't worry if you can't make it. Don't you worry. It will be available. The full recording will be available. In fact, the first webinar that we did, the first coaching clinic that we did in November was actually watched by more people after and fewer live coaches. And I understand. I think that's probably the best way to go because your schedule isn't going to match everybody else. It's not going to match my schedule. And it's important to find a slot that fits your schedule to watch the webinar, get the information. And you can always follow up with an email or we can jump on the phone and discuss certain questions that you have or any follow-up items that you'd like to discuss after watching the recording. So the pitching webinar, pitching clinic is this Thursday. You can go to the website. I'll actually put the link to the webinar in the show notes, the show summary for your podcast app. You can go to the website 80-20 Baseball and you can sign up for that. You want to be prepared when you walk out there to coach your pitchers. Do you want to be prepared to be able to coach each part of their game this season? Then the webinar, this clinic is for you. Absolutely. Here is what you will leave the webinar, the clinic, knowing. 1, how to effectively coach the pitching delivery, both the windup and from the stretch. Number 2, how to build a great bullpen practice routine. You're going to get a bunch of tips on how to structure a bullpen practice routine to maximize the efficiency of it and the effectiveness. The third thing that you will learn from attending this webinar, how to slow down the opponent's running game, including a breakdown of our top pickoff drill. You're going to get our top pickoff drill here at 80-20 Baseball. Number 4, how to safely and efficiently get pitchers stronger and more athletic with no extra equipment. You are going to get a routine that doesn't take up a lot of time, but can make a huge difference with your pitchers when it comes to throwing strikes, their health, etc. The 5th thing you'll leave the webinar knowing is how to improve your pitcher's defensive skills. We are going to break down, I'm going to show you our top pitcher fielding drill, our top PFP drill. It hits all the main defensive plays that a pitcher needs to make all in one drill simultaneously and also safely. And the good thing about seeing these two drills is you will see exactly how we design the drills. So it covers, and if you don't have it yet, go get the drill mastery guide. It breaks down the 8 steps to a great or perfect drill. That's available on 8020baseball.com free. Go get a copy of that right now. And you'll see how we put all those parts, those steps, those 8 parts to a perfect or at least an elite drill into place in those 2 drills. And then you can extrapolate from those 2 examples that you'll see, and then you can apply them to any and all drills. So excited about the pitching clinic coming up. Now on to this episode. Pitching is 1A, 1B. Hitting 1A, 1B. You can flip-flop those depending on your team and the situation and time of year and what your needs are as a team. But really it's 1A, 1B. Hitting, pitching, pitching, hitting. We'll talk about pitching in the webinar, of course. But what about hitting? The other massive needle mover outside of the trifecta, which is team culture. How's the hitting going? How are those 3 hitting plans coming along? Plan A, Plan 2, Plan Take. I'll tell you what, if you have not listened to those episodes, there's 2 or 3 back quite a ways. Go back, listen to those, apply those, get those down. You can go read the article on the 80-20 Baseball website. The article on there breaks it down. You can see the steps, bullet it out, get those implemented, show up to the pitching webinar, and listen to the rest of the episodes, and you're going to have a really good idea of how to build a good team quality, team culture. I hope those hitting plans are coming along well. I've had some emails from coaches sharing with me that they've had a lot of success using those plans. Trust me on this. Use those. Plan A, plan 2. Plan take isn't necessarily a plan you need to practice a whole lot, but as a coach, it's definitely a plan you should understand as a coach, especially at the youth level. Pro level, college level, a little different. There's a little more autonomy with the hitters. Youth levels, plan take is something that you as a coach should know the situations, the outlined situations, the clearly defined situations that I've laid forth for you that you would go to plan take, essentially take the pitch. Get that plan A and plan 2 going in your batting practices all day, all night. Get it going. Batting cages, main diamond, hitting drills, get plan A and plan 2 going. Now we are going to dive in. Part 3 of our trilogy are diving in to Heads Up Baseball, essentially the most famous, most well-known baseball mental game book that there is, Heads Up Baseball by the late, great Ken Revisa and Tom Hansen. There are probably 20 awesome tips in this book. 2 weeks ago, I broke down 3 of them. We discussed 3. Last week, we discussed 3 more. And this week, we're going to make it an even 9 as we discuss our last 3 tips from Heads Up Baseball. The first one we're going to talk about, you don't need your best stuff and what that means. You don't need your best stuff out there to win and how we need to give this message to our players. The second thing we're going to talk about here, focused stretch, focused catch, and know your role. That's the topic title. Those are the topic titles. So let's dive into it. You don't need your best stuff. So on page 89 of the book, it goes into players not needing their best to be successful. In fact, players are not going to have their best, are not going to be at their best. They're not, as hitters, going to see the ball perfectly every game. As pitchers, they're not always going to feel great. They're not always going to have their best stuff. As base runners, they're not always going to make the best decisions. Players are not always going to be at their best. Now, we've talked about how, and we've talked at great length on almost 4,000 minutes of this podcast, of how to get players to their best. But here's something we also want to share. This is very important that we share this message with players. This is something that should be brought up consistently. It doesn't need to be discussed at length, but it should be brought up consistently, this message of, hey, you're not always going to have your best. You're not always going to feel great. That's okay. Neither is the other team. Neither are all the other players. That's all right. It's not about feeling your best. It's not about having your best all the time. It's about competing, doing your best when you don't have your best. And it's okay. You're not always going to have your best. That's normal. That's part of sports, and that's part of life. You need to show up on those days. You need to make it count on the mound when you're not feeling your best, when you don't feel like your command, your control is there. Maybe as a hitter, you're not seeing the pitch coming in looking like a beach ball, but more like a little pea. And the message we want to share with our players is that's okay, but they need to compete. They're not always, and very often, they may not have their best stuff. They may not have their A game, and that's okay. They need to have their A-game mentality. They need to go out there and compete at an A-plus level. This is a message you need to share with players, and you need to let them know the expectation is not for them to have their best stuff day in and day out. It's just not going to happen. They need to go out there when they don't have their best stuff, which could be every other game, which could be 2 out of 3 games. Hopefully not, but sometimes that's just the case. You as a coach need to share with them the message. Make that something that is more normalized. We need to address this elephant in the room that players don't always feel great out there. They're not always dialed in. They're not always 100% focused. Yes, sometimes they're just in the zone. They're locked in. They can't miss. They're on autopilot. It's dial a pitch. Everything is automatic. It's great. But many times they're not. So it's important that we share with the players that it's okay to not get frustrated and caught up in how they physically feel or the lack of skill they feel at that particular moment or that particular game, but more importantly, how they respond to it mentally. You don't need your best stuff, and they need to have the awareness to know when they don't have it, to not get triggered emotionally and start to self-destruct and get flustered, but to realize it, to know that it's common. And thus, they need to just step up their mental game a little bit more to be successful and not to dwell on what they don't have, but that mental strength, that mental focus that they can draw from and go to. So let it be known to your players that they don't need to have their best stuff to win. In fact, they will not have their best stuff all the time. It's part of the game. Even the pros, the major league players, do not have their best stuff all of the time. And in many cases, like in the major league season, a long season, college season, a long grind, they don't have their best stuff half of the time. Youth baseball, they're younger, they're physically can respond and rebound physically much better, but they're going to have some funks. They're going to have some struggles physically. They're not always going to be at their best, and they don't need their best stuff to win. The second thing I want to dive into here, page 140 of this amazing book, focused, stretch, focused, catch. So many teams, so many youth baseball teams, so many high school teams, and even college and professional teams don't focus. They don't start to dial up their focus until after they've gone through their warm-up routine, dynamic, static, whatnot, and their throwing routine. I'll tell you what, this in practice is a problem. In a game or in a game pregame situation, this is a huge problem. What you're doing is letting players practice without focus. Focused, stretch, focused, catch. This is what the book is talking about. Players need to start to focus in on their stretching, on their stretch routine, their dynamic routine. They need to be present. They need to be attentive. They need to have intent. They should not just be going through the action on their stretch and their catch, so their throwing routine. During their throwing routine and their dynamic warm-up or their static warm-up, if you're doing some of that, there should be intent, there should be presence, attentiveness to the process, and not just going through the actions. Some red flags, talking, a lot of talking. That's a huge red flag. Unless the talking is about sharing ideas and strategies and tactics and tips about how to get better at that particular skill or that particular thing that they are working on at that particular moment. Other than that, it is a big red flag that players are not dialed in. They're not focused where they need to be. You may say, well, they need some time. Hey, what do they do in the dugout before practice starts? What about after? What about all the free time they have on the weekends or other times, in the car, this, that, and the other, on their phones? They have time to not be dialed in with their focus. But what you need to do is not wait, and definitely before a game, you do not need to wait right before game time to think that they're just going to lock it in. Get that going early. And also, it's a long-term strategy. It's a long-term strategy. For example, if you start meditating, you're not going to see a massive increase in focus and awareness and presence and calmness. You may feel a little bit right after, but you're not going to see it in your day-to-day routine. You're not going to see it help you throughout the rest of the day all that much if you just have done it a few times, if you've just done it once or for a week or two. But what happens is you start to train your mind over time in the same way that we're talking here. So meditation needs to be done consistently and daily to have that effect, and you're not going to see the effects, the benefits right away. Same with the physical fitness element. It takes months, at least weeks when you're young, but months as you get older, and sometimes years to see big gains, massive improvements with our physical development, our physical improvement, muscle tone, losing weight. It takes time. You wouldn't walk out of your first Orange Theory, your first CrossFit, your first time at LA Fitness or Planet Fitness or your local gym, yoga, Pilates, what have you. You wouldn't walk out of there your first time and expect to look in the mirror and see a massive difference, if at all, any difference. You might see a little blood pump, so there might be a little bit more veinage and things like that, but you're not going to see much difference. So my point to this is, the more you can practice focusing and dialing it in, the mental game, that is, the focus, the awareness, the presence, the opposite of just going through the motion. If you can dial this up, if you can practice this more often, if you can get players on this track, this mental track more often, it will become stronger and more consistent throughout the season, throughout a long tournament, so on and so forth. So this is important that we don't just wait to turn it on once the game starts in terms of our focus, our awareness, our presence, our attentiveness to the process, our intent. Our players need to be intent. They need to start dialing that in well before the first pitch. And in my opinion, it should be done right away when they start that first exercise in their dynamic warm-up routine. If that's what you start, if that's the initial step in your pregame routine, that's where it needs to start. Now, when you finish those routines, and there's a few minutes between the next thing, or the umpires and the coaches are meeting before the game for a couple minutes to go over the ground rules and this and that and the other. And that might be a few minutes to let the players lose some focus, kind of drift off a little bit, or talk and laugh a little bit and joke. Now, that's not a bad time to have an assistant coach go through some visualization, and we've discussed a 2-minute visualization routine on this podcast before, so that might not be a bad time to do it. But there's going to be some pockets of time, albeit very small during a game, where the kids can just relax and bring their focus and discuss or, make a joke with one another. But it should not be when they're doing specific actions that they are prepping to get ready for the game by doing. Those specific game actions that they are repping and prepping before should have full intent, full focus, full attentiveness. Hold on, timeout, Blue, timeout. My daughter just walked in. She wants to say something.
Hi, baseball coaches.
All right, well, that leads me into my next and last discussion point, my last strategy and tip from this episode, or for this episode, and that is know your role. In fact, many of you on this or listening to this podcast are indeed knowing your role, and that is to be a good parent. You're out there coaching, helping in your local community. You are doing your thing with your role. And my daughter, my role first and foremost is to be a good father and a good husband, and then from there, we want to excel, of course, but as you all know, it starts there. All right, know your role. Know your role. Not your role as a coach. This is about players' roles. Being a role, you talk about role players. Now, in youth baseball, there are fewer role players, right? There should be a little more emphasis on an equal distribution of playing time. I don't think it needs to be exactly equal, nor can it ever be exactly equal. But with that in mind, there will be players that have certain roles. There will be role players most likely on your team. And as you get older, if you're coaching higher levels, there's definitely going to be role players. It's important that the players know their role, but I think more importantly, the role players that might not get as many innings, as many at-bats, as many opportunities to play a certain position, it's important that you sell their role. I coached alongside two awesome coaches, Coach Mike Curran and Tim Murray, and both of them did an outstanding job of clarifying the role for the players that weren't going to be out there as often. Now, again, I know with youth baseball, this doesn't always come up as much, but these coaches would do a great job of selling and sharing with the player the importance of their role and how it was going to help the team win more games. Now, they never lied to the kid, but they definitely sold them on the benefit of their role. And to an extent, they shared out their vision of that player's role with them in the best of lighting. So they really highlighted the benefit that it could bring to the team, not necessarily the benefit that their role was going to bring to the team every game or even in the course of the season, but they sold them on the idea that it could very well have an impact on the team's success, and thus it's valuable and vital and important that they take their role seriously and they have motivation and energy to go out there and practice when they're not seeing the field as often or getting to play the positions that they would prefer to play, or batting as far up in the lineup as they'd like, or pitching as many innings as they would want. Here's the thing. We have to make sure that each player feels valued, they believe in that value, and as a coach, we believe in that value, and this will also help us as coaches. This helps us as coaches see their role a little more clearly, a little more defined. Now, I think it's important we don't do it so specific and we don't pigeonhole them into we cage them into a tight role, but give them the parameters of their role, a little vagueness to that extent, but share definitely the benefits that you see them bringing to the team and the importance of it, and connect it and tie it into how it's going to help the team have more success. It's not that hard to get buy-in from your all-star players, the stud players. Sometimes it's hard to get buy-in on some of those kids because they are too good, they're too cool for school. But most of the time, it's not as hard to get the buy-in from them because they're out there, you're putting them at the top of the lineup, you're putting them on the mound, you're putting them at shortstop. There's likely going to be an easier opportunity there to get buy-in from those players. But the players that are not seeing the field that much, et cetera, those are the players you really want to get buy-in from. And it goes along with you're only as strong as your weakest link. The weakest link can bring you down. And I know that the weakest link is not always going to have the most tension on it. It's not going to be pulled on as often as some of those players that get more innings or get more opportunity at some key positions. But eventually throughout the season, those weak links will get some tension. They will get pulled on, and you want them to be as strong as possible. And it starts by getting buy-in from those players. So to review, Heads Up Baseball. This was part 3 of our 3-part series where we dove in, did a book review on Heads Up Baseball by Ken Revisa and Tom Hansen. The subtitle, Playing the Game One Pitch at a Time. If you go back a couple episodes, that was the main tip, playing the game one pitch at a time. And we just finished up the last tips 7, 8, and 9 today. You don't need your best stuff. The players need to know they don't need their best stuff. They don't need to have their A game to go out there and win. And there's going to be games they need to go out there and win with their C and B game. They need to compete. They need to get out there and not focus on what they don't have, but what they can bring to the table to help their team. Focused stretch. Focus catch. The throwing routine, the dynamic warm-up, there should be presence, attentiveness to the process, not just going through the motions, not just going through the actions, but there should be intent. Start that intent. Trust me, this is something that you want to build up. This is a skill you want to build up, and it takes more time now probably than ever with the kids in today's society. You can never practice presence, attentiveness, focus enough in today's society with today's kids. And lastly, know your role. Players should know their role. Share with them. Be very clear on the benefit of whatever their role is and how it's going to help the team and how it likely will help the team as the season progresses. Don't lie to them. Don't embellish it. Don't even white lie it. Stick to the truth, but shine a bright light on those maybe rare opportunities where they can add and contribute to the team, but will likely get that opportunity during the course of the season. Share with them the value, highlight the importance in it, what it's going to do, the impact it can have on the team's success. All right, go to 8020baseball.com, sign up for the webinar, and if you can't make it, don't worry. Just let me know. Email me, say, hey, you signed up. Email me, Coach Bo, 8020baseball.com, Coach Bo at 8020baseball.com. Tell me you can't make it, or just sign up, and you'll automatically be on the list for that. You'll automatically be receiving all the stuff that comes along with the webinar, including the recording link as soon as it's ready to go. All right, take care of yourselves, your health, take care of your families, your friends. Take this information out there and take care of the baseball community, take care of your baseball team. Go out there prepared, ready to go. Don't go out there and guessing. Take the guesswork out. Use this stuff that's been proven over time, tested out by tons of different coaches. It does work. Take it out there, build it into your system, and know that you will have success. If not right away, over time, you will have success with this. With that said, until next time, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.